Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mary. It was really insightful, especially about understanding what actually decolonization is. My question is like, the decolonization movements in Pakistan and India. For example, in Pakistan, these are majorly run by, the Islamist movements, which are also quite some extent like extremist in nature. I mean, for example, Maulana Maududi in Pakistan, Jamaat Islami, they also claim like what they are doing, that's also decolonization, and they want to get rid of colonial legacies. On India side, what is happening, that's also the extremist kind of, the Hindu movements, which are like not only they are going for decolonization, they are also going for de-Islamization. According to them, there is not much difference between means British colonial legacies and means Middle Central Asians like colonial legacies. They don't differentiate much. So, what's your opinion about it? Do you think there is like the progressive movements related to the human rights and liberalism and all these things, and which are like for the decolonization, and which have the balanced approach in that regard?
Thank you so much for your question. Interestingly, part of my PhD was looking at how Maududi had a theological influence on Zir's Islamization process. So I talked about how they had a similar anti-colonial rationale for Islamization in Pakistan. So it is a good point that some people did within the Islamist movement were going towards a decolonial kind of approach to things, even as far back as at the time of independence and thereafter. It's a difficult one because, as you say, I think the case in India goes to show some of the dangers of decolonization if it's used to kind of marginalize and discriminate against people based on kind of stereotypes about the population. For me, decolonization is about removing injustices that have been established through colonialism. So I think then it becomes a problem when it's enforced upon the people in a similarly unjust way, and it has this approach to an identity that's quite exclusivist. People would say, scholars have said that in Pakistan and India, this tendency to put history into neat, distinct categories, like, as mentioned, ancient Hindu being more indigenous, and then medieval Muslim, and then modern British. They see that as quite artificial, and that it ignores actually the relationship between religions and cultures that existed in each of those periods. And we've seen also in Pakistan, both, I think, because of the British, but also because of Pakistani leaders, this attempt to kind of get rid of syncretic practices in the region that people would consider to be indigenous. So these would be ways in which, say, within Islam or say within Hinduism, there were aspects of faith that had been impacted by other religious communities or kind of cultural practices in the region. And people would say that actually that's an indigenous thing. So I think, yeah, we have to be careful about being exclusionary, and we have to reflect on actually what is kind of indigenous to the region. And often for me, in my understanding, is it's these more positive syncretic ways that bring people together regardless of their religious identity. So I think as long as decolonization isn't enforced in a similar way to, say, Islamization of Pakistan that was kind of enforced from the top down, and it doesn't use these kind of colonial artificial categories that differentiate between people, then I think it can be hopefully a force for good. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.